Same plant, same soil, same gardener. One of these hydrangeas is putting on a show. The other one is having an identity crisis. Hydrangeas have a reputation for being finicky. That reputation is mostly wrong. What's actually happening is that hydrangeas are specific. They have rules, and most beginner mistakes come from not knowing what those rules are. In this video, you're getting everything you actually need: how to pick the right hydrangea for your space, the pruning mistake that costs people an entire year of blooms, the soil trick that controls flower color, the watering pattern that prevents wilting, and the placement decision that determines whether your hydrangea thrives or just survives. Let's get into it. Number 1, the variety mistake. Here's the mistake that causes half the confusion beginners run into before they've even planted anything: treating hydrangea as one plant with one set of rules. It's not. It's a category, like saying car when you actually mean a specific model with its own specific maintenance manual. There are several major types, and they don't all play by the same rules, especially when it comes to pruning, which is where most of the real damage happens. Big leaf hydrangeas, otherwise known as Hydrangea macrophylla, are the classic mophead and lace cap varieties. Big, round, often blue or pink blooms. Panicle hydrangeas produce cone-shaped flower clusters and are notably more cold-hardy and sun-tolerant. Oak leaf hydrangeas have distinctive lobed foliage and excellent fall color. Smooth hydrangeas, including the popular Annabelle variety, produce large white blooms and are some of the most forgiving of the bunch. So before you do anything else, prune, fertilize, move it, panic about it, identify exactly which type you have. The plant tag, a quick photo search, or the original nursery label will tell you. This single piece of information determines almost every other decision you'll make about the plant, especially the next mistake, which is the one that ruins the most gardens. Number 2, the pruning mistake. This is, without exaggeration, the single most common reason beginner gardeners end up with a hydrangea that just won't bloom, and it's almost always self-inflicted with the best of intentions. Big leaf and oak leaf hydrangeas bloom on old wood, meaning the flower buds for this year's blooms were actually formed last summer, sitting dormant on last year's stems through the entire winter. If you prune those stems back in spring because they look bare and unattractive, you're not tidying up, you're cutting off the flowers before they ever had a chance to open. It's the equivalent of throwing out a wrapped gift because the wrapping paper looked a little dull. Panicle and smooth hydrangeas, on the other hand, bloom on new wood, growth produced in the current season, which means they can be pruned in late winter or early spring without sacrificing that year's flowers. Same general plant family, completely opposite pruning rules. For old wood bloomers, prune immediately after flowering in summer, not in fall or spring. For new wood bloomers, late winter pruning is fine and actually encourages stronger blooms. If you genuinely don't know which type you have, the safest move is to do minimal pruning. Just remove dead or damaged stems until you've confirmed the variety. A hydrangea you barely touch will still bloom. A hydrangea pruned at the wrong time might not bloom at all. Number 3, the color mistake. This is the trick that's having a real moment in gardening content right now, and it genuinely surprises gardeners every time. For big leaf hydrangeas, flower color isn't fixed. It's a direct, controllable response to soil chemistry. Here's the mechanism. Hydrangea color depends on how much aluminum the plant can absorb from the soil, and aluminum availability depends almost entirely on soil pH. Acidic soil, or lower pH, makes aluminum available to the plant, which produces blue blooms. Alkaline soil, or higher pH, locks that aluminum up so the plant can't access it, which produces pink blooms. White hydrangea varieties are usually genetically white and largely unaffected by this. No amount of soil chemistry is turning a white hydrangea blue, the same way no amount of effort turns a goldfish into a shark. The mistake beginners make is assuming color is just luck, or worse, assuming a color-changing fertilizer is some kind of magic trick, rather than straightforward soil chemistry doing exactly what it's supposed to. To push blooms toward blue, lower the soil pH using products containing aluminum sulfate, or work in naturally acidic amendments like pine needles or coffee grounds over time. To push toward pink, raise the pH using garden lime. Changes aren't instant. This is a gradual shift over a full growing season, not an overnight transformation, and it only works on varieties genetically capable of producing both colors in the first place. If you've ever looked at a hydrangea, fallen in love with it, brought it home, and then had absolutely no idea what to do with it, this channel exists for exactly that moment. Every week, we break down real plant-specific advice, not generic water it sometimes content, but the actual rules behind the plants people love most. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and come back every week. We've still got watering and placement to cover, and the placement mistake is the one almost every beginner makes without even realizing it. Let's keep going. Number 4, the watering mistake. The name itself is basically a warning label. Hydra, water. Hydrangeas are genuinely thirstier than most garden shrubs, and the mistake beginners make is treating them like a set-it-and-forget-it plant once they're established. Hydrangeas have large, broad leaves with a lot of surface area, which means they lose water through transpiration faster than smaller-leafed plants. On a hot afternoon, it's completely normal, not necessarily alarming, to see a hydrangea wilt dramatically, like it's having a full Victorian fainting couch moment, only to bounce back completely once evening temperatures drop and it rehydrates. The real mistake isn't occasional afternoon wilting, it's chronic underwatering during the actual growing season, especially for plants in full sun or container situations, where soil dries out fast. Water deeply and consistently, aiming for about an inch of water per week, more during heat waves. Deep, infrequent watering is far better than frequent, shallow watering. It encourages roots to grow downward, searching for moisture, rather than staying shallow and dependent on you topping things up constantly. A thick layer of mulch around the base, 2 to 3 inches, makes an enormous difference here, holding soil moisture and buffering root temperature, which is exactly why mulching is trending hard right now across nearly every low-maintenance garden conversation online. Number 5, the placement mistake. This is the mistake that quietly undermines almost everything else on this list because it happens at the very beginning, the moment you decide where to plant it, and its consequences don't show up until much later. A lot of general plant advice defaults to full sun is best, and for many plants, that's true. For most hydrangea varieties, it's actually a trap. Big leaf hydrangeas in particular tend to scorch and wilt excessively in hot, all-day, direct afternoon sun, especially in warmer climates. The ideal spot is usually morning sun with afternoon shade, giving the plant enough light to fuel blooming without subjecting those big, thirsty leaves to the most intense heat of the day. Panicle hydrangeas are the exception here. They genuinely tolerate and often prefer more sun than other types. For big leaf, lace cap, and oak leaf varieties, choose a spot with morning sun and afternoon shade, an east-facing bed, or a spot near taller plants or structures that cast shade later in the day. For panicle varieties, full sun is genuinely fine and often produces the best blooms. Getting this one decision right at planting time prevents half the problems beginners spend the rest of the season trying to troubleshoot. 5 mistakes, 5 fixes. Know your variety before you do anything else. Prune at the right time for that specific variety, or barely prune at all until you're sure. Understand that color is soil chemistry, not luck. Water deeply and consistently, especially through summer heat, and place big leaf varieties where they get relief from afternoon sun. The hydrangea that looked like it was having an identity crisis at the start of this video wasn't broken, and it definitely wasn't cursed. It was almost certainly pruned at the wrong time, planted in the wrong spot, or both. Two completely fixable mistakes that have nothing to do with luck and everything to do with knowing the specific rules for the specific plant in front of you. That's really the whole secret to hydrangeas. They're not difficult, they're just particular. Learn their rules once and they reward you with the same dramatic, oversized blooms every single year. If this video finally explained why your hydrangea has been doing its own thing all these years, that's exactly what this channel is here for. Like this video, it helps more gardeners find plant-specific advice instead of the same vague tips recycled across every other channel. Comment below and tell us which type of hydrangea you're growing or trying to grow. And subscribe if you haven't already. Same time, same channel. We'll see you there.